Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Bique. I'm co-founder and CEO at Cult Security. I hope you guys can all hear me correctly. I'm super pumped to be present here for a day of security today. This is my first year attending and the first year speaking as well. So extra excited about that and really couldn't be more excited about training you guys on how to train business roles to assess security and data privacy risks. I'm going to go through my session roughly like this. So I'm going to start with a quick introduction about myself so you know who's speaking here, and then I'll go into the background, delve into the method of business threat modeling, which is our method for training business roles for assessing data privacy and security risks. And then I'll hope to, as quickly as possible, get us to the interactive session, the interactive part, where I hope as many of you as possible will fire up the Google Forms link that I have there in the chat box and join us in this interactive threat modeling session. That'll make it so much more fun if we have the audience inputting their ideas and thoughts on that. And at the end, I'll try to address some questions and answer those from the chat box. Slides are a bit small and far. Thanks for that comment. I'll try to make that a bit more approachable. It's a bit challenging when trying to get the form as well there. Presenting mode, yes, but I need to be filling in the canvases at a later point. So I need to be in this view, unfortunately. Okay, glad to hear that's better. All right, so just quickly about myself. As I already said, my name is Maria Bique, co-founder and CEO at Cult Security. I have a background in bioinformatics, medical physics, and biomedical engineering. And you might wonder why a medical physics nerd, what is she doing in cybersecurity? And I think that story really roots back to my passion for technology and my belief that technology really has the potential to solve so many of humanity's larger issues, the big problems that we have. My worry there is that we won't be able to train enough cybersecurity professionals to actually babysit those people that are making that life-saving technology. So I think we need fresh ideas, we need fresh approaches, we need some way to get people more aware about data security and data privacy risks in their day-to-day work and also in their day-to-day lives. And one of these tools is our business threat modeling. And maybe some of you are wondering why would we train business roles to do risk assessments themselves when we're the experts and we love to help, right? Well, the answer is that in the past, we didn't need to do that. We worked in waterfall mode. So when business wanted technology, they would come up with specifications and then go to the IT department, and the IT department would then develop that technology that would then be tested, hopefully also by security people, and then it would go live. And this was a very controllable, predictable flow where we could easily interject our gates, where we would, as security professionals, help and assess the risks when it comes to the specifications, when it came to the development and the testing, and then finally we'd have a secure product go live. Unfortunately, or fortunately, these days, the world works a bit differently. These business roles don't have to go to the IT department. They have their credit cards. They can go online. They can go partner up with a startup, take a no-code platform into use. They can just sign up for free trials. There's of course an abundance of free cloud tools online. Anything available there they can use to test their hypotheses, get it right back to their clients. And we're in an environment that looks less like the waterfall and more like spaghetti. And here we security professionals have to wonder, like, where are we supposed to fit in? We can't be in all those bubbles. So we're in really an environment where businesses are constantly making decisions about data. They're running on data, and we need to figure out how to support them with that, because we can't be there every single time they're making a decision about technology, about data. So business threat modeling really is our approach to that. It's our tool to facilitate that day-to-day decision making by business leaders. And I guess the main philosophy behind that is that we believe that it's a better idea to teach business leaders how to fish than to constantly keep handing them the fish. So when we're doing risk assessments for them, we're handing them the fish. And that risk picture, that fish that we're giving them, they may or may not trust us enough to eat. They may not agree with that picture. They may prioritize other issues, as is quite common. Of course, they have a lot to do and tight schedules to get everything done. So our extra security work isn't necessarily welcome. We really need to work to get them to buy into that. And that's where the business threat modeling comes in. So we really want to coach business roles to assess those risks. We want to teach them how to fish. We want to create that risk picture together with them in hopes that it will instill more motivation in them to mitigate those risks. And what this business threat modeling process looks like, we have these digital canvases. Today we'll be working them in slides, but also possible, of course, to use other tools. But slides was most compatible in this case with Hopin and the way I have to run this session this time, so I chose that. So with digital canvases, we start with a privacy and data ethics assessment. And typically we start with the business impact analyses as well. In this case, I have a completely hypothetical example, so I don't feel like there would be much point in us trying to guesstimate those business impacts in that case. So we're going to skip over that. It's also a canvas that we typically customize, and organizations like to score risks differently and estimate impacts differently. So we're going to skip over that, but we're going to do the privacy part, and then we're going to delve right into malicious threats and mistakes and misuse. And I find that a lot of threat modeling exercises focus exclusively on the malicious threats and external threat actors, whereas we all know that most of the risks are actually internal slip-ups, everyday errors, and that's the challenge, that we need to understand where those might occur and how we might mitigate those errors. And at the end of this process, we arrive at risks that are prioritized based on impact and likelihood. And then we arrive at prioritized mitigation activities. And because we're doing this with business, we're talking about data, we're talking about human interaction with that data. All of the mitigation doesn't need to be technical. We can talk about contract mitigation, we can talk about agreed responsibilities, we can talk about training needs, and really approach this on a much broader level than we typically would when we were just looking at the technical vulnerabilities. I'm not saying that this replaces a technical threat model. It definitely doesn't. It complements it, and it's the tool here really helps the business prioritize the risks. It's not meant to replace technical threat modeling in any way. In this hypothetical exercise that we're going to jump into, I have some pre-filled risks for this case that we're then going to quickly look at and how that works. So I'm unfortunately not able to quite take all of your input and get that into the canvases as finalized risk at the very end, but this is the process that we're roughly going to work with. So just to get us quickly on the way with group exercise, I managed the introduction in 7 minutes, so we should have plenty of time for this and questions at the end. And I hopefully, as far as I understand it, I should also be able to grant you guys audio. So let's see if I can get some of you guys to also comment live. So word of warning, I'll be using a fun-ish, entertaining example of a social beer rating app in this example case that does not constitute an endorsement for the app or drinking beer. So I really want to stress that I want you guys to drink responsibly. I want you guys to stay at home, follow all the C19 rules until we're out of this mess. And I'm really in no way affiliated with this app itself. And I haven't done any offensive digging into their security posture, and I don't recommend that you go ahead and do that either. So what we're threat modeling here in this case is an app called Untapped. And it's basically, as I said, it's a social beer rating app. So you rate beers, you tag yourself, you tag your friends, and you earn badges. And here, for example, you see myself and one of the cult co-founders, Thamu, were enjoying a low alcoholic New England IPA last summer at an outdoor venue, and then Thamu reviewed it as 3.5 and tagged me in the post itself. And there's quite a bit of information involved in actually creating an account, and you can also use your Facebook login to create an account. And as well, the app keeps track of your location in a Mac or in an iPhone. In an iOS, it allows you to choose whether you allow that location tracking while using the app, whether you allow it once or you don't allow. So these are kind of the high-level screenshots of what this solution looks like. So when we delve into the first part of this exercise, which is privacy by design, so we take a look at what sort of personal data we're collecting. And here at the center of this canvas, we have the data subject, the individual that we're collecting data from. I've kindly gone ahead and named this person Hoppy Maltington, and we start by looking at what sorts of different kinds of data we have on Hoppy. And in this case, let's start with a simple category. So we have Hoppy's contact information, we have Hoppy's biographical information. We don't really need her data on education or professional experience. Of course, there's always a chance with these sorts of free platforms that you don't know what people input in their profiles, but by and large, that's what we're dealing with. The sensitive data category mirrors what the EU General Data Protection Regulation defines as sensitive data. Of course, that may or may not be relevant to you depending on what region you're in. But here for EU citizens, we consider data such as health data, political affiliations, and sexual life. And maybe you're wondering at the first glance, like beer rating app, why would we have information about political affiliations? We've included this here because in some geographies where you drink implies your political affiliation as well. So we can't be fully safe from that in this context. And sexual life, of course, it depends where you're hanging out, can give clues into that and who you're tagging yourself in those posts with all the time. So that's something that we need to be aware of, that these tag-ins, the information that the users are inputting can be used to infer quite sensitive information. Behavioral data, we in this app context, there's a lot of that. So we have location information. Some people might just allow location tracking all the time, not just while using the app. So we might have a data set of where people are at all times. We have data on their preferences. So what kind of IPAs or pale ales they enjoy, what sort of alcohol do they drink? Do they drink alcohol or no alcohol, and all that. We have that right in the app. Then we have engagement data, so how much a person is using that app, which can of course be quite sensitive on its own. So if I'm tagging a new beer every single day, I guess you can infer that I'm drinking a fair bit of alcohol. So we have to keep that in mind as well. And then our social networks, so who are the people that we are drinking beer with, and that's obviously shared with the app. Financial information, not so much in this case. This app is free for all the beer drinkers. It's the breweries and the venues that sell beer that pay for this. So the business model is B2B, it's not B2C, so we're not tagging any of those categories. The next part is where it gets interactive, and I would like you guys to feed in. I have this impact of privacy breach canvas, and then in the Google form that I linked at the start of the chat, I hope you can all find that. Just please type and let me know if you can't. It's at the very start there's a Google form, not collecting any information about you. You're completely anonymous, just answer the questions. And I like to get as many of you as possible polling in on this so we kind of get a consensus on this. So if we start with financial loss, what we think would actually happen to these beer drinkers. We're not thinking about business effects to Untapped or anything like that. We're talking about the individuals, Hoppy Maltington and co. What could possibly happen to them in the event of a privacy, in the event of a personal data breach? So do we think that these individuals could suffer financial losses? In this canvas, we have a slider from negligible, I always get that wrong, to severe. And this is really about the impact to the individual. So would the individual be severely impacted or negligibly impacted? And this is really not about probability. Of course, we could try to estimate that as well. But here we're interested more in what would be the severity of the impact to an individual. We're not talking about probability, not talking about how likely it would be for a widespread personal data breach that would affect a lot of people severely. We're just talking about the one individual. And I think in this case, when we're purely looking at financial impact, since we're not collecting the individual's financial information, we don't have their credit card numbers, we don't have any of that, then I would say that there would be no or very negligible direct financial impacts. Have you guys gone in and voted in the polling forms? Can we see? We see no responses yet. So in the very first, section 2 out of 3, might the beer drinkers face financial losses? What do you think? Do you agree with me? Can you try to vote negligible, severe, somewhere along the slider so I get some idea that you guys are awake and following? All right, we're getting responses. Yay. One person wasn't asleep. Can we get someone else? Oh, we're getting 2 responses. So we see in real time quite a disparity here. So somebody thinks it's actually quite severe. Can we get a comment in the chat box on why you feel that way? You don't, of course, have to. We don't mean to put anyone in the spot. It's just good to get some discussion going, and would be very happy to get some differing opinions. Another one agreeing with that. Can we get some input in the chat box on any sort of reasoning behind this? So we have one person saying that it's negligible, and then we have two thinking that it could be even higher, much higher than that. I think that's very interesting, and it could be correct as well. I'm not sure. I very quickly prepared this example for you guys. I'm not in any way, like I said, I'm not endorsing Untapped. I'm not working for them. Haven't done any sort of threat modeling with them. So this is purely speculative and something that I thought of by myself for this exercise. So I'm very happy to be proven wrong in some of these cases and consider looking at it from a different angle. So now we're tied between 1 and 4. So I think our audience seems quite torn. I'll keep going, and if you guys come up with some justifications, some new ideas, I'd be really happy to discuss them. So just input in the chat box if you think if you'd like to share your reasoning and your ideas. The next part is burglary. So would a personal data breach put individuals at risk for actual physical burglary? And you guys can go ahead and answer the further questions. I see you guys are already doing that. That's awesome. So we can go faster forward with the session. And here, I guess my own input before looking at your answers would be that since we are tracking people's location information and the location information of intoxicated individuals, I would guess that if that would leak, there would be some motive for some threat actors to try to abuse that and try to get there and threaten them with such a financial motive. So here we again have quite a spectrum. So do you think that it's right in the middle, and some agree with me that it's quite high, and then we have some lower end answers. This is really interesting stuff, and again, like for all of these, really would be interesting to get your input in the chat box and why you feel a certain way, and really add that to the discussion. Sorry, I happened to skip a slide. Oh. No. The dangers of trying to operate many things at once. And then public embarrassment, so reputational damage. This is, of course, a very relevant category always when it comes to sensitive information. How would the individuals react if this information was suddenly on the front page of the internet? Would they be embarrassed? Well, some might take great pride in their peer reviews, but I guess there's bound to be a set of people that would be fairly embarrassed if their identity leaked in connection with this information of how often and what sort of beers they're drinking and what sort of people they're doing that with. So there's a significant reason to believe that people want to keep this information private, and when they're disclosing it with the staff, that they may not necessarily intend to disclose it with the whole world. So I would guess that in my view, reputational damage would be maybe one of the key risks that I would see relevant here. And you guys agree. So for once we have consensus, it's easy to place the ticker somewhere here. Persecution is now I did it again. Persecution is an interesting impact, and in this case, of course, depending on I don't have the exact information on all the countries that Untapped operates in, but of course there are more strict regimes where alcohol consumption is very sternly disapproved of. So in these cases, I guess these people could very well be persecuted for this reason. Let's see what you guys have voted here. You guys agree that this would definitely be on the higher end. And I think so far the answers also illustrate, like, to very much illustrate how subjective these values are. And in these sessions, I think the greatest value is in the discussions we have with the business roles, and getting really their input and their feelings on this and trying to arrive at the consensus. Very often this conversation, that gets muddled when we're trying to disagree whether something's a 4 or a 5, and trying to arrive at numerical impact. So like trying to quantify, like in how many dollars would the impact, what would be the dollar range of the impact of public embarrassment. That's of course a highly subjective measure. In this case, even the slider is subjective, so we can understand if the more detail, the more numbers we try to put on it, the more unquantifiable this actually becomes. So I think that is why we have these sort of vague sliders here, that we really want to give room for the discussion, not focus too much about individual numbers, but try to understand everybody's viewpoints and why they feel this risk is lower and why they feel it's higher. And then moving on, we have some more motivations. Of course, some of these are quite related, but still in some ways distinct. So we look at discrimination. Do we think that individuals are at risk of discrimination? And again, this might be data that accuses in on people that really consume a lot of alcohol. And I guess in some workplaces, this might not necessarily be information that would get anyone a promotion or help them get a promotion. So this is something that could, in my view at least, have a discriminatory impact if it got out in different circles. Let's see what you guys thought. Yeah, you definitely agreed on that one, that it's somewhere here. I'm not going to try to calculate the averages on the fly, but just to illustrate, placing the tick marks somewhere roughly where we all agree. And again, encouraging you still to bring up some of your own viewpoints and perspective to this, things that I am not thinking about or explaining myself, that if you have some differing viewpoints, please bring those up. All right, and then things get even more serious. So we think about the physical safety impact, and of course burglary also had to do with taking this digital app into the physical realm. Here with physical safety, again, we're in the physical realm, not so much in the digital one. So we're thinking about whether this location information, this information that a person might be intoxicated at a specific place at a specific point in time, would that compromise their physical safety? And I guess I would have to say that I think that's fairly likely, that there would be some threat actors that could have even that sort of sinister motives. And here, I guess most of you would agree that this is a concern. So again, putting a tick mark over there. Manipulation is an interesting category. Quite often when we're doing these exercises, we think initially, no way, and then, oh, yes way. So this comes up. So these days, of course, influencing people, this whole information warfare, political campaigning, political polarization in all countries effectively has an impact on this, and becoming more widespread of a concern that there will be threat actors that will try to influence people at scale. And this is something that maybe I'm not the best expert to assess, and I won't try to assert my own definitive judgment on this question. I'm very interested to see what you guys think. You guys think so? That's definitely interesting. And I think in general, when we view this, remember that this app is a public social platform, that this definitely, it's not far-fetched to think of such scenarios where there could be a threat actor that would be trying to influence people at scale. Finally, we consider other motives, and these can then be extremely business specific. For example, we've had medical provider cases where we've identified that there might be drug addicts that want to abuse that channel for trying to get prescription medication. That's not a very typical cybersecurity motive, and certainly doesn't apply here. There's no way of getting a prescription drug prescription through Untapped, but those scenarios exist that can be very specific. Lovely, we have some free text scenarios here. That's pretty interesting. The getting caught if cheating, get caught if drinking at work days at lunch. Definitely. They could be really, really embarrassing for some person to be caught like that. and agree very much on the cultural context. That's something that I tried to discuss earlier with different sorts of cultures and regimes where alcohol consumption might really polarize views and might be in general in the society not accepted. So definitely agree that there could be these motives as well. Right. Again, welcoming comments in the chat box, and we can return to this. And quite a topic, typically we do. So when we're running these sessions with business leaders, we do a very iterative process that at some point when we're discussing the motivations, we realize, oh, we also had photos and videos of the data subjects. And I guess in this case, we do as well, actually. We do have people posting photos of when they're drinking the beer, and some will photograph the flask itself, but it's of course possible that people will post more revealing photos of themselves as well. But next in this exercise, after discussing these privacy impacts, we would typically go to the business impact. But since I said at the start that we will skip that and we'll just move straight to the motivations to attack this service. So it's time to think about the bad guys. And I guess many of us in cybersecurity love this part. It's quite fascinating to think of the threat actors in different contexts and think of their motivations. I find that these days, I would say that considering the skill level is less relevant because of the ecosystem that's forming around hacking, that there are very specialized, industrialized actors out there selling their services to hack. So if you have enough motivation and you have enough money, you can get that technical expertise behind you. So it's less about individual technical skills, and I find that it's more about motives. But I would also be very, very interested if you guys want to challenge my view on that. But that's at least how I see the ecosystem as it is. So when we think about the motivations to attack Untapped, so what sort of motivations might threat actors have to target such a social beer drinking app? And here again, we made this interactive in the poll, and it's interesting to go directly into the results that highlights clearly two different motives, access and fame. I still want to explain a bit how we interpret these motivations in this context. So access, for example, would be just to be able to use this service. So public paid subscription service like Netflix, there'd be a strong incentive for individual users to try to bypass that payment wall and try to just gain access to the content without paying. So in that case, the motivation would be fairly high. I would see that in the context of Untapped, that's slightly lower because we're not collecting payments. We're not making the individuals subscribe to this service. The subscriptions are entirely from the businesses. But of course, there would be an incentive for breweries and all these business stakeholders here to possibly for free promote their product on Untapped. So I can definitely see that possibility. Then again, we had the financial gains, and here, of course, a lot of hackers are financially motivated. A lot of hackers don't care about their target, whatever. They will try to, as broadly as possible, try their antics and see what sticks. So here we're really trying to understand what is unique about that business, what would be the unique financial motivations that attackers might have specifically towards this business. So we all know that, for example, some CEO scams and general phishing attempts and whatnot, that those are present, and that risk is roughly the same for all businesses of a certain size. But in this case, I guess with financial motives, I could myself imagine that breweries would be quite interested in tweaking their own ratings, their own data on the app in their favor, perhaps if they're malicious enough, trying to fiddle with their competitors' reviews. So that's certainly a very interesting viewpoint, and I could see that financial motivation present there. And then, of course, we discussed the political and religious motives, and these, and depending on the geography and culture, these would definitely exist. And then here we had some other motivations. We had fame, we had an indirect motive. The indirect motive refers to the attacker not being so interested in Untapped and the data assets that Untapped has itself, but actually using Untapped to get access to other companies or other individuals. And it gets a bit thorny when we're talking about, for example, revenge and stuff that could be really targeted to specific breweries, not really Untapped, but we try to keep that as a separate category. Fame, it's simple enough, and we know that a lot of especially less resourced, more junior hacker groups are very happy to deface, to publicly put something funny, silly on public applications. And I guess here, a beer drinking app would be pretty rife for some peer recognition. So if we could get some dinosaurs with hats on the front opening view of Untapped, that would be, I guess, a lot of peer recognition involved with that, and that would be pretty cool. So I would estimate the fame would be quite the motive there, to try to at least deface the app, if nothing else. Revenge often as a motive is very organization specific. We don't really, in this context, we're not going to speculate on the leadership, the culture at Untapped, or what other factors there might be that might promote revenge motives, either in competing breweries, in the customers, within the employees, within the organization. But that exists there, and it's quite often a category that sparks some interesting discussion. And like I said, indirect would be more using Untapped to get to something else, another company or corporate customer. So in this case, some sort of a brewery or joint. And then other motivations might exist as well. So I guess we have all sorts of malicious or like spouses and individuals that might want to spy on information at large, or I guess there could be celebrities as well using this platform, and some people might have the motive to get information on them. Really happy that we're getting some responses here and people have answered more of these questions. So let's just go forward here to the next point, where we consider what sorts of threat actors might have these motivations that we just discussed. And I added some possible attackers here, some general archetypes that we work with: professional phishers, malicious insiders, state-sponsored actors, junior hacker groups, hacktivists. And looking at what you guys said here, for financial motivation, definitely I would agree that professional phishers would be most keen on getting into that app and getting in between those customers to try to get information that then they could use to either extort those customers or then gain their bitcoins in another fashion. So definitely agree on that. And Google, apparently, yeah, they had the malicious insider as a purple one. That's good to see, and you see that definitely there. I would say that for Carlsberg, name any beer manufacturer in the world, I guess they could be quite interested in a global data set of people, what sort of beer people like. That could be quite useful for product development. So that's definitely something that I would consider, that it could be quite easy to convert some employee inside the organization to gain access to all that information. So that information might be actually a competitor that would be motivated to gain that. And hacktivists, definitely, for the political and religious motives. So very, very polarizing thing, this beer drinking. So there could be motives to attack based on that. So I definitely think you guys are well aware and have the right idea here. Really happy to see that. When we go forward, we get into the mistakes and misuse, and unfortunately here, a theoretical stage example of an organization that I guess none of us are part of, I'm assuming, but please tell me in the chat if I'm wrong, is of course a bit difficult, because this is all about how that organization works and how the people are working. And this is where the value, I think, of business threat modeling really comes in, because when you've gone through this exercise and you've gained that trust and gained that open dialogue, you're in a much better position to try to discuss what it might be in the ways the people work in the organization, in the way the customers use the solution that might create information security and data privacy risks. So in the conventional way where I, as a security professional, come in with a scary looking Excel sheet with a lot of difficult questions, with a lot of formulas and dollar signs and scary impacts, quite often, and I'm not saying that this is the case everywhere, we have organizations that have a much more transparent culture where it is easy to talk about mistakes and shortcomings, but quite often we find that the things in real life don't exactly align with how we've documented on paper. So we might have the best, most thorough backup policy, but realistically, it hasn't been tested in a long time. And these are the kinds of things that when you've had the people in this session form that risk picture together with you, really see what the actual threat to what we're threat modeling is, that they're much more likely to open up about that and try to find solutions with you. And especially when you communicate that it's not about enforcing policies and making you do a whole lot of extra work and finding expensive technical mitigation. It's really about just training people and really focusing on those sorts of mitigations that sometimes they're actually quite low-hanging fruits that we can tackle these risks when we're in open dialogue about them and we get to discuss these. And these categories that I have on this canvas are actually, as you might guess, quite often quite organization specific, and they're also case specific. Here we're talking about an app, so a lot of these categories are relevant, and very often we do threat model apps. Sometimes we do this as a training exercise. So we have, for example, customer success managers of an organization come in on this session, and then we try to look at the data that they process in their day-to-day work and go through this. And in that case, this looks a bit different. Like in the case of, for example, a data validation fail. In an app case, we would be looking at technical data validation more likely. In the case of those human customer success managers, a data validation fail might, for example, mean that your customer contacts you to let you know that they've changed their contact information. And that sort of course, you need to validate that this came from a genuine customer, that you're not accidentally then disclosing information to somebody that you should not be disclosing it to. So these all take on a bit of a different meaning depending on context, and we find that this is something that we often need to customize per organization. In this case, I've added already a few post-its for just to kind of illustrate where this could be with the untapped case. And we pretend here that we could maybe be vulnerable to copying data errors if we, in this case, let's say that Untapped has some junior data scientists working on the data set and trying to come up with intelligence, trying to come up with AI insights into how people enjoy the brewery's products and try to boost the brewery value that they get from the Untapped subscription by providing such insights. Then, of course, if those junior data scientists aren't properly trained, and they might be uploading that data set to, for example, a free version of Power BI or whatever software as a solution of whatever cloud solutions we have online. And that, of course, creates a vulnerability if we don't know exactly what are the tools they're using, and if they're using free tier solutions where we have no control over the security there. So I've added that as a possibility, not saying that they operate in this way, but I guess it could be easy to imagine in certain contexts that this could be a risk. Then a data validation fail, I've highlighted here from the angle that the customers can input whatever. Of course, we have the check-in form, so it could be a risk that I could put something there that really shouldn't belong there, malicious code or just way overly sensitive information about other individuals and all that. So an issue to validate that data before it goes public within the app is and validate permissions. So for example, if I'm sharing data with my Cult's co-founder Teemu, and we really only want people in our networks to know that we're drinking beer together, if they don't validate that and there's an error and that goes to the public, then of course that's a greater issue. So we have that definitely present there. And then we think about weak passwords, whether people have such, and whether that could be a vulnerability. Of course, in this case, we have no idea about Untapped's password policies, and I won't begin to speculate that, but in very many organizations that can be an issue, and especially in this era where we have typically have our own devices, and there's less maybe central management of phones, in a sense that we can buy our own phones, our own devices, our own tablets, that might then create a vulnerability. And neglecting backups, again, I'm not going to speculate in what way this might occur at Untapped, or may not occur at Untapped. We estimated here just for illustration's sake that it would maybe be unlikely. Then use of insecure infra. Of course, people are using pre-COVID, I guess now in this restricted world, not many people are using bad pub Wi-Fi's, but in the pre-COVID world, a lot of people were using bad pub Wi-Fi's to transmit this information that they may only intend to their network. So of course, there's a risk that this would then disclose the information more at large. So once you've gone through all this together, we come up with risks. So we have different kinds of data sets in the context of Untapped. We have the actual Untapped data sets. So all the beer reviews, everything that goes into it. We have Untapped as a company vulnerable, and that the actual app itself, not all the data that is connected, but the actual app. And then, for example, through the defacement vector, and then we have the untapped users that might be vulnerable due to the insecure info, for example. And then we put this risk mitigation canvas side by side, and we try to think of what can we do about these specific risks. And again, this might be something that we customize. Not all businesses are created alike, even though most businesses these days do deal with the software and technology. It's still, everyone's not the same kind of software company. So there's some variation here, but the pre-filled categories we have here are security awareness and culture, contracts and agreed responsibilities, infrastructure and third-party services, concept and business processes, and then finally, actually last, the technical implementation and architecture. So of course, depending on your organization, you might want to focus a lot on the technical mitigation and not trust your people to mitigate the risks. But then in some organizations, you might be working with tighter budgets, and the technical mitigation might not be feasible, or it might not even be desirable. You might not want to restrict access very strictly in your organization if you believe much in information transparency and people having access. So that is a category that is very specific to the organization, how they want to utilize that. And security awareness and culture, we can do this exercise, and we typically do it in many ways. So we might think of very specific mitigation activities. So how do we train? What do we need to train? What is the medium are we training? The DevOps team behind Untapped, are we training the users? So are we going to try to put in some warnings in the app that, okay, don't disclose your political affiliations while you're using the app? These are all relevant mitigations that we can employ, as well as, of course, technical checks that such information would get redacted out of the solution, for example. So that's an illustration of the internal vulnerabilities that might occur, and those risks and how those might be mitigated. And here I've done the same for the malicious violation cases. So where we have public authorities, we have those hacktivists, junior hacker groups, even malicious insiders that want to attack the data sets for those various motivations that we just discussed. So we try to form this picture at the end and look at what is the threat aspect. In some cases, it's not as clear, but we work with the very standard CIA model, the core of information security. So we look at whether it's a threat to the confidentiality of the information, whether it's a threat to the integrity of the information, whether it's a threat to the availability of the information. And sometimes it threatens all of these. And for example, here, the junior hacker group, if they're just putting those dinosaurs with hats on the app, they're not really threatening confidentiality, but they can threaten the integrity of the information within the app, and they can also threaten the availability of it if you have to take it offline following such a defacement. So they would be doing this for fame, but they wouldn't be attacking the confidentiality, they would be attacking the integrity and the availability of the Untapped service itself. And again, we can think of mitigations for that. And what sort of controls can we have? Of course, we can have all sorts of website monitoring services. We can have design the concept and business process around having a fair bit of other kind of validation. We have a lot of options here when we think of how these humans interact with technology, both within the organization and then the end users of the service. And we have 15 minutes left. I'd like to just hopefully maybe inspire you guys that this is not the only way to do this. The sky is the limit. I think canvases are really a great tool for us information security professionals to get on the same level and be more approachable to business leaders and really co-create stuff with them, not just tell them how to better make decisions, how to better do their job. I think this co-creation method really pays off in that. And at Cult Security, we've designed all sorts of other canvases. We find that even boards of directors like to use our canvases to understand risks involved in future scenarios that they're, for example, trying to decide between. And this is something that we've done, but really the sky's the limit, and you should involve other people in your organizations already, even in creating these canvases. So I don't know, not all security professionals are deeply into design and necessarily want to do that, but I'm sure you can find people in your organization that will support you with this initiative. And I think it's a great way to really create practical security culture and get everybody to care about cybersecurity and get everyone involved. All right, this closes my monologue of a talk so far. I'd be very happy to, if you guys reached out to me. I especially would like to discuss with anyone researching these sorts of methods and tools, whether we could do some collaboration around some academic research. I mentioned my academic background at the start, so I'm always up for that, and very curious about the research aspect and validating these approaches through that. So that's something that I'd be very happy if people would reach out to me for. I've included my email address and as well my LinkedIn profile, and please do connect with me there. I'd be happy to connect with a lot of you guys, aspiring and already seasoned female security professionals. That would be a great honor. Checking the chat as it is, I don't see any questions now. We do have a fair bit of time for such, so please, guys, let me know if there's anything you'd like to discuss and for me to address. Not seeing any questions, or I guess I don't know if I would see anyone typing either, but I guess that's it for today, folks. Very happy to connect with you guys afterwards, like I said, so please do reach out to me. Just connect with me even if you don't have an immediate need to discuss these things. I'm very happy to connect with you guys. All the best, and enjoy the rest of the sessions today. Thank you very much.